Now, I promise you, if there's ever been an SCHD video that you wanted to stop for a minute and watch completely through from start to finish, it's going to be this one. And that's because I'm going to share with you guys all the reasons on why this ETF could potentially be the one-size-fits-all dividend growth style ETF that could not only change the future for you financially, but also potentially for generations beyond. Now, why am I qualified to talk about SCHD? Well, I currently hold almost 2,400 shares across my portfolios, and I've been buying this ETF for the last 3 years straight. Along with that, I've studied this ETF in and out, and I know a lot about it. So just give me a few minutes and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know about this ETF, along with the math behind a $25,000 initial investment, and share with you how that can compound and snowball into a massive amount of money. So if you're a dividend growth investor, stick around, drop a like down below, and let's get right into it. My A to Z dividend investing ebook has helped countless dividend investors get started with their journey. And my custom dividend tracker that I'm constantly using here on the channel has also helped so many investors stay on track and allow them to see their dividend income in real time. Well, today I have another treat for you guys. I'm not only going to offer you my A to Z dividend investing ebook and the custom dividend tracker, but also just for a short limited time, I'm going to be adding in my brand new weekly dividend blueprint ebook to show you how you can get started with weekly dividend ETFs and add this into your investing strategy. This offer is not going to last long, so go ahead and click the first link down below in my description, and you're going to get both ebooks and the custom dividend tracker bundle. But like I said, please act fast because this won't be around for long. Now let's get back into the video. And before we go through the actual math and I share with you guys what a $25,000 initial investment looks like into SCHD extrapolated out over time, the first reason I think this ETF is a potentially perfect one-size-fits-all wealth builder of an ETF is because there's no capped upside. Now, what I mean by capped upside is that these days, a lot of us dividend or income focused investors are invested in different cover call style ETFs that might yield, say, 7, 10, 12, 14%, which I think are honestly amazing. I hold several of them across my long-term portfolio. But the problem with some of those ETFs is that there's not necessarily going to be a massive amount of growth potential because of the cover call overlay. Now, SCHD is not a cover call ETF, so there is the potential for a massive amount of growth, which is definitely going to do numbers in your portfolio, especially considering in the past 13 or so years, the ETF is up over 230%. Now, some investors are more focused on growth, some investors are more focused on income, but that's honestly why I think SCHD is a perfect one-size-fits-all ETF, because it offers exposure to income, but as you can see right here, also a massive amount of growth. Now, the second reason I think SCHD is the perfect ETF, especially for a dividend-focused investor, is because its dividend growth rate over time, or how much more in dividends it's paid compared to the previous year, has been anywhere from 12% per year to 10%. And over the max time frame, this ETF on average has paid around 10%, 11% more in dividends year after year after year. Now that means that for whatever shares of SCHD you have in your portfolio, you're basically going to be getting a raise and more income the following year. Now, just because SCHD paid more and more in dividends over the past several years doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to for sure do so in the future, but just based off of the fund's previous numbers over the last decade or so, we have reason to believe it might. Now, the dividend growth rate is going to be specifically helpful when compounding a $25,000 portfolio, but again, stick around because I'm going to share with you those numbers very soon. Now, the next reason I think SCHD is an amazing ETF is because it does have a long track record. The ETF has been trading for 13, 14 years now, and just because an ETF or a stock has been trading for, say, 1, 5, 10, 20 years, doesn't necessarily mean that it's good or bad. But with an ETF that's built like this one, we have a long time frame and multiple different crashes, bull markets, and everything else in between to see more or less how it's going to perform, at least how it has historically. Now, again, just like anything else with investing, previous performance does not indicate future performance, but again, track record is helpful, especially when it comes to dividends, seeing how much this ETF is paid in dividends over time, and again, looking at the dividend growth rate, it definitely gives us investors at least an idea of what we can expect in the future. Now, the other reason this ETF is amazing is because it is very cheap to own. The total expense ratio is just 0.06%. Now, the expense ratios of an ETF don't really add up necessarily all that much when you just have a few shares, but think about longer term in the future. If you build out a portfolio like I'm hopefully going to do, where I have 4,000, 6,000, 10,000 shares, at that point, you're definitely going to want to pay a little bit closer attention to expense ratio because the numbers can definitely add up. Now, with SCHD's total expense ratio of just 0.06%, I mean, it's more or less free to hold on to. The next reason SCHD is amazing, and I think it's going to perform very well for a long time into the future, is because it tracks the underlying Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index, which has a very strong methodology and multiple different screenings to basically construct the portfolio of the underlying holdings and to tell different stocks to either enter or exit. Now, this obviously over time has been very effective. I mean, if we look at SCHD's cumulative returns, the ETF's averaged around 11 or 12% return every single year since inception. So obviously the underlying methodology is doing something right. Some investors are a little bit critical of it, but again, the numbers are the numbers. Now, speaking of the underlying portfolio, this ETF is also very diversified. Whenever newer investors ask me how they should get started when it comes to dividend investing, I always say the same thing. Start with ETFs, look into ETFs that hold multiple different stocks, because therefore you're not putting all your eggs in one basket and you're getting diversification in a lot of different names. Now with SCHD, there's around 100 different stocks within the portfolio. So again, if 1, 2, or 3 names maybe have a bad quarter or a bad year, for 1, it might be kicked out of the underline during the next reconstitution, but for 2, it's not necessarily going to tank the portfolio. Now, as if that wasn't already enough good reasons to look into this ETF, another good reason is the fact that this ETF is potentially tax efficient, which again, as you guys know, I don't like to go too deep into taxes just because taxes are such a personal thing, depending on your own situation, where you live, etc. But SCHD is potentially tax efficient, which especially once again, your 5th year, your 10th year, your 20th year of investing, taxes are probably going to be more and more top of mind. So again, buying ETFs that have potential tax efficiency is probably only going to be a bonus. Now, lastly, before I go through and share with you guys the numbers, the $25,000 investment extrapolated out long term, this ETF is what I would consider a sleep well at night ETF. Now, I say that especially during 2025 so far, we've seen some decent volatility in the market, and a lot of investors have been a little bit shaken up just because some of their holdings have tanked quite a bit, whether it's a single stock or even certain ETFs out there. Now, SCHD is no different. This ETF can, of course, lose value, gain value, anything else, but so far, this ETF has remained somewhat stable, at least I would say, if not one of the best performers out of the bunch that a lot of us dividend investors hold on to. Now, I can't speak for everyone, but having shares of this ETF in my portfolio allows me to sleep very well at night. I honestly am not worried about SCHD or what the price of it is, and that's whether it's today or tomorrow. So now that we went through maybe the best list of all time, why SCHD ETF should at least be an ETF worth looking into for you personally. If you're a dividend investor, I wanted to of course share with you guys what a $25,000 investment initially into SCHD ETF and then $2,000 annually from there based off the 3.6% initial annual dividend yield, an expected annual dividend amount increase of around 10%. Of course, this could go up or down, a 5% annual share price appreciation, 30 years of investing. Now, over this time frame, the distributions, the dividends every single quarter are going to be reinvested. So again, by reinvesting those dividends and by having that dividend growth, basically you're buying more shares, getting paid more and more every single year, and allowing the power of compound interest to do its thing. Now, the numbers are in the first few years, what you're going to see, what you're going to notice is SCHD is not a get rich tomorrow, get rich quick ETF. It's going to take some time for the power of compounding to really kick in and for the numbers to get bigger. But once the numbers get bigger, they start to compound on top of each other. And the ETF could potentially help a portfolio snowball into a massive portfolio relatively quickly. Now, another note on that, if you contribute more money every single year, of course, this is just based off of $2,000 per year. But if you contribute, say, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, whatever the case might be, this portfolio obviously is going to potentially grow a lot faster. So starting off with $25,000, you're at $912 per year in dividends. Around 10 years down the line, though, we're already at $80,000 of a portfolio and around $4,400 per year in dividends. Now, 20 years down the road, we're at over $250,000 and around $23,000 per year in dividends. Now, after the 30 years of investing, the $25,000 to start, this portfolio would potentially be worth around $1.2 million and be earning upwards of $150,000 per year in dividends. So again, if you're relatively young and even if you don't have millions and millions of dollars to invest, there's still several different wealth-building vehicles that can at least potentially, based off of historical numbers, again, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but at least potentially compound a relatively small amount of money into generational wealth. Because if you change the 30 years to 40 years, you can see how fast the ending balance really starts to compound. So now that I shared with you guys some of the best aspects possibly about SCHD or the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF and share with you guys why I'm so obsessed with it. Along with that, I share with you guys how just a $25,000 initial investment could at least potentially compound into life-changing generational money later on. I lastly, most importantly, want to hear from you down below. When it comes to a certain stock or ETF that you're stacking shares of as of right now, trying to build out a massive long-term position, drop some of your favorite ticker symbols in my comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.